Yeah, welcome back. Things are moving really fast now with the US and Israel's attack on Iran, killing its supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, and then the ripple effects across the Middle East, first of all, and then across the world. So we'll talk about that event. There's a security angle to it. There's the international law angle. Human rights always come into play when events like this happen. And then we'll talk about Nigeria as well, because Nigeria had been in the mix with the US prior to this. We have joining us on the program international human rights lawyer, 2023 US Secretary of State Awadi on international religious freedom, Mr. Kola Lakpini. He's live with us from our Abuja studio. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Naturally, we'll start from what is playing out in the Middle East and now across the world, right? Because this is a global issue. And I wonder for you, when you look at issues like this from an international law and human rights perspective, you know, one sovereign nation, well, two sovereign nations attacking one sovereign nation, its leader killed, other officials killed, and then it's been going back and forth. What do you see?
Well, I don't see anything different from what happened in 1986 when the Panamanian leader, Noriega, was extracted from his country. Certainly, it's not different from what we saw a couple of weeks ago in Venezuela, where Maduro and his wife was captured by the United States forces. It's always been happening. It's usually whoever has the higher might dictates international law. It's as simple as that, and we've seen it again happening in the Middle East with preventive strikes, so said, undertaken by the US and Israeli forces. So the major thing that is worrisome is the deliberate targeting of civilians and civilian installations, maybe hospitals, residential buildings, etc. That's definitely a violation of international humanitarian law, also known as the law of armed conflict.
And you know, it's been said that at times like this, you would expect to see the United Nations, but there's been a build-up. The US withdrawing from the United Nations, some of the organs, defunding, now saying, well, we have our own League of Nations, right? So is there anybody that is not anybody, and I mean body, not human body, like a body now, multilateral body, that is able to wade in and sort of get some sense into these countries? Because at this rate, we're looking at a World War III.
Well, I hope that day doesn't happen. The challenge with the United Nations is the Security Council itself. So, and if you remember, Fela Anikulapo Kuti sang in his famous song where he says, within United, inside United Nations, 99 votes, one veto vote is equal to 92 or 99, etc. So there are 5 powers in the world, which is the USA, France, China, it used to be the USSR, now the Russia and Britain. So these are the people who control the world and control the United Nations. And once one person decides to do something, it will get away with it. There's nothing the other 5 can do about it. And that's what we're seeing happening in the Middle East. You've got China there. They can't stop the United States from doing what they're doing. Israel is operating under the cover of the United States. So whatever Israel has done, Israel is going to get away with it. And we've seen it continuously happen, even when the issue with Hamas occurred and Israel struck back in a very heavy-handed way. Nobody could call Israel to order. So that is the challenge. The United Nations does have a moral voice, but that's it, a moral voice. The real people who control the world are the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. And whenever any one of them decides to take one action, you can see it also happening in Ukraine. Who's going to call Russia to order? Russia is a member of the permanent Security Council, is a permanent member of the Security Council. So they will always get away with almost everything. And you can see that the United States, as you rightly said, defunding, pulling out of some of the organs of the United Nations. As a matter of fact, they have said, or the rumor is that the peace board that President Donald Trump is established now is rivaling the United Nations.
And you know, there are legal dimensions to it, to the extent that the UN has been described as a paper tiger in different fora, beyond the, the fact that it's 5 members that control the Security Council. There are also, charters establishing not just the United Nations, but international organizations, others to which these countries belong to. But speaking of the legal dimensions, Nigeria has also been at the receiving end of the Trump style of diplomacy under this current U.S. government. And the recommendations that came through last week from the U.S. Congress, about how Nigerians should tackle, her banditry and insurgency problem has received some pushback. Specifically, that bit about the scrapping of the Sharia. The Muslim sections of the country have said we have a right to, govern ourselves the way we are convinced we should. But I'd like you to put a legal interpretation to it within the context of a secular country.
Okay. First of all, I have to warn you that I am before the Supreme Court, especially on this matter. We're challenging the constitutionality of the Sharia criminal law in Nigeria. So I might skirt around some issues, not being able to delve into the core of some others because it's before the Supreme Court. However, historically, we've always had Sharia law in what has now become Nigeria. You must remember that Nigeria essentially were 2 countries. We had northern Nigeria and we had southern Nigeria. It was fused together by the British for economic reasons, which they said the north was not viable, so they had to fuse this country together. The south, which had more economic power, would now power this union known as Nigeria. But to be able to come into this union known as Nigeria, the British wanted us to do away with some bad practices. You remember that there used to be the killings of twins in southern Nigeria. This was abolished by the British because they said it was repugnant to natural justice. Also, in some cultures, where a widow, a woman loses her husband, and she's being forced to drink the water which was used to wash the corpse or shave her head, all these dehumanizing methods were outlawed by the British. And in the north as well, they told northern Nigeria that you are not going to be chopping off people's limbs, stoning people to death, flogging people for adultery, or etc., or stopping people from, exercising their rights. So this was the compromise when Nigeria was formed, and we did away with, the criminal aspects of Sharia law. The present-day Sharia law has been practiced in northern Nigeria, the 12 northern states, 12 states in the north. It was smuggled in through the back door. Number one, nobody saw the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria until the day Chief Olusegun Obasanjo was sworn in at Eagle Square. In fact, he said he never saw a copy of it. He didn't know anything. It was just sworn to protect what he had never seen or read. Nobody debated it. Because if it was thrown into public debate, we obviously wouldn't have what we have in the Constitution. What we have in the Constitution of Nigeria is Islamic personal law. That is what the Supreme Law says. The Constitution is the ground norm. That is what the Supreme Law says in Nigeria. And even with that, it has brought in confusion because there is no specific pronouncement on Islamic criminal law, the Sharia criminal law, which is the aspect that deals with regulation of, if someone commits adultery, someone steals, chop off his hand. What it talks about, what the Constitution talks about in personal law is, oh, I'm a Muslim, I want to marry more than a wife, or 2 or 3. It regulates that. How your inheritance is disposed when you've passed away, personal, religious taxation, zakat, etc. That's what it talks about. And you can see where we are now. The constant denial by the government of Nigeria that there is no Christian genocide, etc. That is what has exacerbated what's on ground. And you saw it's been constant years of lobbying in DC, not less than 4 years. Nigeria is complex and the situation is multifaceted. What is happening in the northeast is pure insurgency. Boko Haram, see them trying to overthrow the state, at some point in time, they even held huge swaths of the land, hoisting their flags and everything, until, we were able to exterminate them with the help of, foreign fighters, rumored from South Africa, etc. What is happening in the Middle Belt, Southern Kaduna, Plateau State, Benue, is Christian genocide. Because why did we arrive at the term Christian genocide? Look at the Genocide Act and the definition. It talks about, it gives you the various steps of who's been attacked that you can classify as genocide. And one of them is when you attack a religious group. Predominantly, the people who live in Southern Kaduna, Plateau State, Benue State are Christians. So when people charge at them, shouting Allahu Akbar, storming at churches, attacking priests, what do you call that? It's Christian genocide. I haven't seen them going towards mosques, shouting Allahu Akbar and destroying mosques and burning mosques and etc. So we're living in denial, and which leads me to the last point which I'm going to make. The Nigerian government, especially the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, I know he supports state police and he's talking about approaching the National Assembly and all, but that's going to take time. If we have a situation where we're completely unable to defend ourselves, these people call them Fulani militia, call them foreign terrorists and all, have invaded our country and running round in circles, the government is running round in circles and they're not able to tackle it. A former chief of army staff in this country, General T.Y. Danjuma, has said, if we keep waiting for the government of Nigeria, we're all going to die. That's what he said, and you can find this video on YouTube. So the current Emir of Kano, he has also said so, that we must rise up and defend ourselves. And I charge the President of Nigeria, he has the powers to make an executive order asking people to defend themselves robustly. He can review it, can make it for initial 6 months, reviewable after 6 months, but it has gone beyond state police. You cannot allow people who are herding cattle all over the country into other people's properties, carrying assault rifles and charging into churches. You can see it encroaching into southern Nigeria now, in Eruku, in Kwara, etc. And you expect the people just to be running into the bushes or forest. There's no government presence. Our military is complicit and compromised. Otherwise, why would someone go and report to the military or the authorities that so and so people have written a letter saying that they are coming to us, and the military completely ignored it until these things happened. We saw it in Kebbi State, where even there was intelligence reports telling us that there was going to be an attack. The governor knew, everybody knew, and they reported to the authorities. Soldiers were sent there, they just took pictures.
Right.
Someone withdrew the soldiers. Nobody has told us who withdrew the soldiers. We haven't heard any punishment. So it's a total mess. The quickest way to solve this problem is to allow people to defend themselves, and you see this problem wither away within 6 months. That's my take.
All right, there's a lot you've packed into your statement. I know that the pushback can always be, predictably, the government will say whether they shout Allah Akbar or not, mosques are also being attacked in the north. In fact, as a matter of fact, there's another question. I want to tie two questions in one, but maybe let me leave it until I verify that particular video. But it's a broader context. I want you to look at it and see how you can localize it as well, because we're talking about ideologies here. And what is legally tenable for preemptive military strike or total takeout that is happening in places like Iran? So, for instance, you see the pattern, the structure of the Iranian government. So they are the only Shiite nation in the world, to my best of my knowledge. They have the Hezbollah keeping Israel paranoid in the north. They have Hamas keeping them paranoid within Israel. And then if you look at the economic element, when you leave the Persian Gulf into the Strait of Hormuz down to the Gulf of Oman, they can cripple things there as you move through that point to the Arabian Sea, to the Gulf of Aden. You now have to do with another component of theirs, which is the Hutu rebel, cramped between Somalia and Yemen, before you can have maybe a little of a leeway through the Red Sea, Suez Canal, before you see to the Mediterranean Sea. So you see they are very strategic, both economically and politically, to keep the system in a chokehold in that situation. I asked the question to say, is it legally tenable to say you should preemptively attack them based on this, or is about a question of disagreeing with ideology, if you get my drift?
Well, I think I do. The first, or the easiest way to attack in international law is to get a UN resolution. And in the absence of a UN resolution, it's usually frowned upon when countries try to, invade the territorial space or violate the territorial integrity of another country. But we also have situations where we've heard the term preventive attacks come up. And this is when you fear for your life or for the life of your country, for the safety of your country, that this person is planning something against me. I have to hit him before he gets me. We saw the US do it in Libya in 1986 with former leader Muammar Gaddafi when they struck Tripoli and Benghazi because they believed that, for whatever reason, which it did, the bombings in Scotland. So Israel, unfortunately, is surrounded by its enemies. And you can see why they have to robustly keep a step ahead of what is happening. If you look at what happened with the attacks by Hamas at the music concert, you can see the justification for Israel for striking back and for trying to take out Hezbollah, trying to take. I might not agree with the methods of Israel because a lot of people think it's high-handed, but there you are. They're going to strike back, and they're going to defend themselves. When you're talking about ideology, well, one thing you know about religious ideology or people who propagate this is that they probably have more grit than our Nigerian politicians. We don't have ideological politicians in Nigeria, and that's why people are able to crisscross various political parties shamelessly, without any. Political parties in Nigeria are just special purpose vehicles for one to get into power. So, but what is happening in the Middle East with the ideologists and what is happening with Israel and all, it's what it is. It's been there for decades. It's going to continue to be there, except we have a two-state solution between Israel and the Palestinians. Regarding the passages which you mentioned and all, I can assure you now that everything is going to be crippled because most of the ships and the tankers ferrying the oil would not be able to pass anymore. Any one of them could be hit by missiles and all, right. And that's going to affect the price of oil. We have already seen it start climbing up. How does that affect Nigeria? Well, usually when these things happen, Nigeria benefits from a windfall from the prices of oil, but we never see it trickle down into the polity. Right. We saw it last during the Jonathan era, where Dr. Okonjo-Iweala was asking us to save money, and we're trying to save. And what happened? The governors all came and said, oh, share the money. And that was how we depleted the Federation account. So when the economic global meltdown happened the first time, we were able to protect ourselves. We couldn't protect ourselves further when we had depleted the money and we started scrambling. Right. So it's a very interesting mix. I don't know how long this conflict is going to continue. Right. But if it certainly continues beyond 4 weeks, we're going to see the price of oil rise up more.
Well, as we said, things are moving really fast, and I just wanted to speak to this as we wind down on this segment. Before we move on then to the security angle, because we wanted to deal with the international law, human rights bit of it. But this is for Nigeria, right? And we've seen a trend. Since 1999, Iran had been declared a country of particular concern by the United States under the International Religious Freedom Act of 1998. Since 1999, literally 1 year, after that Religious Freedom Act was enacted, right? And we know, yes, the Sharia law is majorly, the law in Iran. Of course, we have the civil law as well, sort of embedded in that. So there are a lot of people looking at that similarity between Nigeria and what is playing out in Iran, and they're asking, did Nigeria maybe dodge a bullet? Because we recall when President Donald Trump was saying, we will go into that country, I'm not going to use the term he used, guns blazing and all of that. So did Nigeria dodge a bullet in your own perspective? And now there's a lot of lobbying now from the Nigerian government.
Well, it depends on the side of the divide which you're on. For the people in the Middle Belt who constantly feel neglected, who feel their voices are not heard, they welcome this development. They wouldn't say Nigeria dodged the bullet. For the first time in a long while, we didn't have Christmas Day attacks on the plateau. One would have thought that a country who are saying similar, in law we call it similar character evidence. They always do this on the plateau and in the Middle Belt, generally around Christmas. You'll have expected that would mount up a robust defense and protect the villagers and the people, the indigents who live there, and we never did anything. As a matter of fact, even when the attackers say, we are coming back, and the villagers and the indigents tell the government and say, hey, this is what they said, the government still never shows up. So the people are disillusioned.
No, Mr.
We have created an ungoverned space, so to speak.
Pardon me. My question is called, what happened in Iran? And this is a bit extreme, but there are people who are drawing similarities. What happened with Iran? They're saying Nigeria dodged that bullet because it could have happened to Nigeria as well, with that build-up we were seeing with Donald Trump, the designation, all of the talks around Sharia law, and that's what I mean. Do you think Nigeria dodged a bullet? Yes.
I think Nigeria quickly handled it differently. Even then, did we really dodge the bullets? We still had missile strikes in Sokoto State,
right.
Although this time with the cooperation and collaboration with the government of Nigeria. So I think the game changer there was that we just handled it differently. What we ought to have done much earlier, we did it late, fire brigade approach like we do with Super Eagles and everything.
Right.
And I'm not sure if we dodge the bullets is the right term, because the US will do what they want to do, whether we like it or not, and that's it. Well, if President Trump still believes that enough is not, he hasn't gotten what he wants, I think the kind of character he has is a strong character. It would still do what he wants to do.
Mr. Alakbini, we have to thank you so much for those insights, particularly linking it to what is playing out in Nigeria. And of course, your case at the Supreme Court is one that the nation is following to see how it will play out. We'll be speaking with international human rights lawyer and 2023 U.S. Secretary of State awardee on international religious freedom, Kola Alakbini. Thank you for your time.
It's a pleasure.
We'll take a moment now. When we return, we now get into the security angle proper. Stay with us.